This is Israeli Technology Founders Speak, a podcast of conversations with successful Israeli high-tech and biotech entrepreneurs. With your host, Avraham Herman. Dr. Herman Weiss is the CEO and co-founder of Provation Life, an Israeli nutraceutical startup that helps women suffering from hormonal imbalance to support their fertility, weight loss, and general medical health. Avraham sat down with Herman in his home in Beit Shemesh to discuss the problem that Provation Life solves, getting funded, building a team, tips for startup founders, and much more. This podcast is a creation of J.M.B. Davis Ben David, an intellectual property law firm serving clients around the world. You have great innovations. We keep them safe. It's not enough to just have a great startup idea or innovation. If you don't legally protect your innovations, products, and brand, anyone can claim them as their own. We keep your great innovation secure. Learn more by going to jmbdavis.com. That's jmbdavis.com.
I'm here with Dr. Herman Weiss in his lovely house in Beit Shemesh, and I'm looking forward to talking to you today about Provation Life, which is your startup that you started. What problem does Provation Life solve?
I am an OBGYN, women's health specialist. I've been in this for 20 plus years and have practiced medicine, treating patients, worked in industry at Teva, started my own biotech company in a medical device space in women's health. Was the head of clinical development, medical affairs at another company in Boston, but always been treating patients. And one of the big things that we do when we're in industry is always looking for the unmet medical need. And one of the largest actual unmet medical need in women's health is something called polycystic ovary syndrome. And why is it such an unmet need is because it's almost 10 to 12, in some studies 15 to 20% of the female population suffers from PCOS. Mm-hmm. And PCOS basically, it is a diverse presentation, and patients come in to see their doctors. The doctors take one look at them and diagnose them and say, do you want to get pregnant? No, here's birth control pills. And if you want to get pregnant, here's infertility. And there's a huge whiteboard in between that. And over the course of my career, I've been, you get articles and research projects about different supplements and different activities and lifestyle modifications that actually work. And so then over the last 15 to 20 years, I've been telling my patients about different types of exercise, different types of supplements, how to improve their mental wellness, how to improve their diet, their exercise and nutrition, their microbiome. And sure enough, over the course of time, my patients have been improving. So I started looking at that and recommending a certain combination of nutraceuticals, and all based on scientific facts that have worked and scientific proof that's worked within the polycystic ovary population. And I would tell my patients, okay, go buy this, and the other thing. And sure enough, a patient's father, who happened to be in America at the time, WhatsApped me a picture and says, Herman, is this what you want my daughter to take? And sent me a picture of like 7 to 8 different supplements. And I said, yeah, exactly. I said, wow, that must have cost you close to $400 for the whole entire, gamut of recommendations. And he says, yeah, it was like $384. I'm like, wow. And that's when they say the Asimone drop. That's when I had my epiphany to say, hey, why don't I put this all together in one supplement? Put it all together in a powder. Patients can take the powder, put it into a smoothie, into a shake, into a meal supplement, combine it with a protein powder, and started manufacturing and put it all together. Actually, I guess this jumps ahead a little bit, but no one has ever put this combination together. Mm-hmm. Everyone only used the individual ingredients for PCOS. When I put it together, I was actually able to decrease the contents, and there was actually some synergies that we observed.
Interesting.
Patients responded quicker. Mm-hmm. We started ovulating again. Those that wanted to get pregnant got pregnant. Those that wanted to lose weight lost weight. There was all these positive effects that we observed within a few weeks of taking the powder, and that's really what prompted my creation of this company. So the massive unmet medical need is in polycystic ovary syndrome, and its treatment of non-hormonal treatments. Now, it could be that these patients will end up needing, whether they need birth control or whether they need infertility treatments. But, the first step should always be this holistic, path forward of improving their diet and their exercise and nutrition.
So you say you have a product already and you're out on the market?
Yeah. So after this, this epiphany, which was about 2.5, 3 years ago, I started combining different amounts of the ingredients. There are 10 different ingredients in the powder, and they all work. Funny enough, they all work for insulin resistance in different aspects of the insulin resistant pathway. Because insulin resistance and PCOS have a tremendous amount of overlap. Mm-hmm. The reason we figured this out was in the 70s, they started giving patients with PCOS glucophage. Glucophage is a medication used for type 2 diabetes to improve insulin resistance, and it started improving their cycles. So PCOS patients were responding to a type 2 diabetes medication. Mm-hmm. And so I started looking not only in the PCOS literature, but I started looking in the type 2 diabetes literature. So a lot of the ingredients that I've put into my powder and to my combination is actually marketed towards type 2 diabetes. Mm-hmm. And again, I have to tell my patients they don't have type 2 diabetes, although they're at risk for it. They don't have, problems with their sugars, although they're at risk for it in pregnancy and later on in life.
Right.
And so this combination was like synergistic. And that's actually how we came across getting the patent, because our levels were lower.
Mm. Okay. Yeah. You're actually going way ahead, and that's great. Sounds very interesting. And you had mentioned also that you're primarily a clinician, OBGYN. You work in the clinic. And can you explain to me, how do you combine heading a startup with your idea and also finding time for your patients?
So yeah, I'm actually pretty busy here. I see patients in Beit Shemesh. I actually have a telehealth service as well. And I'm constantly, interacting with my patients, for my company, for Provation Life. We're very open, patients who buy our product and want additional advice. And, we also I put on an educational, YouTube channel, that patients can get educated about their, PCOS. And, one of my biggest foundational, pillars is educating the patient. And so when I'm seeing my patients in the office, I'm not that I'm using my tools, but I'm honing my education of what works with them, what doesn't work, what resonates with them, what they respond to. And I try to get, not better and better at what I'm doing, but at least more helping them get educated more and more. So I do see a lot of patients, and I'm very busy, in the office. But that just helps me, think about different things, and I write it down and say, hey, let's work on that. Let's help patients get educated, in various ways. Another epiphany moment, and I'd love to share this, is I was at a wedding once, and I was sitting at a wedding, and I didn't recognize the couple sitting next to me, but they leaned over and they said, Dr. Weiss, you saved our daughter's life. And I had no idea that I was their daughter's patient. I don't necessarily talk about my patients outside of the office. And they said, 2 years ago, you made a comment about, she had PCOS, and you made a comment about how she should increase her exercise after she eats, or I have a whole spiel about that, about how to improve her behavioral, modification, so to speak, and her relationship with food. And I was making these comments just as I would normally do. And it resonated with her. It changed her life. She lost weight. She got pregnant. Everything that she wanted to do in life, she accomplished. And she owes that all to me. And I wasn't expecting that at the wedding. I wasn't expecting anything, but really it dawned on me that we need, as physicians, we need to communicate better with our patients. Because patients listen to us.
Yeah, I think anyone who's been to a doctor, and I think that's also pretty common here in Israel, feels that same thing, that you really need communication with your doctor, and your whole medical experience is just going to get so much better if you have that.
Yeah, and it's not as if I'm doing any crazy off the charts things. I'm just talking to patients. And so that really, impressed upon me. And then I started talking to doctors in the States about just talk to them about this, that, and the other thing. And the doctor actually, this broke my heart. The doctor said, well, insurance companies don't pay me to talk to patients.
Wow.
Yeah. It was a mic drop moment. And I had nothing to respond to it. It broke my heart. I said, well, why'd you go into medicine? It turns out, it was a dermatologist, and our powder is actually good for, adolescent acne and PCOS acne, and because it decreases the androgen levels, because of the insulin resistance and the LH. So it actually helps to decrease androgens. It helps with acne. And so I said, people want immediate responses or immediate results, but that's not life. It has to be very patient, and you have to work your way through it. You didn't develop PCOS overnight. It's not going to go away overnight.
Right.
And so if you're able just to kind of tilt that equation from elevated androgens to lower androgens, and that takes time to do, then you're going to see some responses. And she said that to me, and I just broke my heart. And I said, wow, there is a huge unmet need there as well. So first I'm going after the patients, and then I'm going to help educate doctors to help to educate their patients as well. So and just a little bit, just trying to move that dial just 1 or 2 degrees, not to change the world.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So tell me a little bit about your team. Who else do you have on your team with you? You're not making this powder here on your own.
Right.
But at the same time, it sounds like you're the main inventor, main idea behind it as well.
Right. So I was sitting with a close friend of mine who was also in the nutraceutical space on the tech side. And he actually lives here down the street from me. He's the COO of a company that was in the cannabis space at the time. And he was working on their websites and really doing all the tech behind it. And, I was pitching to him just my ideas, and his eyes opened up, and he knew a guy who was one of the founders of Focus Factor. Do you remember, in the late 80s, early 90s, or maybe it was 90s, 2000s, there was a nutraceutical product based on one 30-patient trial that did $100 million in sales to help focus, and that was kind of launched the nutraceutical industry, so to speak.
Interesting.
And I pitched to him. He loved the idea. He introduced me to his manufacturer. The manufacturer sits in Pittsburgh. So we manufacture everything in the U.S. and package it and ship it out from there, and got it FDA approved or allowed, so to speak. It's very difficult to get a nutraceutical with specific claims for diseases,
right,
that you can say supportive of different scenarios, so to speak. So you're not treating any diseases, but you're supporting ovarian health. Yeah, so that was our manufacturer. So the COO jumped on board, and he runs all my back office stuff. I pitched to my idea to a local digital marketing team here, and she was the CEO of that digital marketing company. Loved it also, and she jumped on board. So she runs our digital marketing. And then, we found an Amazon guy who leads our Amazon team. And, you need a lot of different people on board. And then as you're aware, I pitched this early on to my brother, who's a patent attorney. And, he looked into it, got his chemistry people involved, and said, it's patentable. And I gave him some of the results that we had and we were able to actually, achieve a U.S. patent.
Oh, you have a granted U.S. patent.
Yeah, granted.
Okay. Wow, that's impressive. It's not so easy sometimes for a startup to get that, and especially I think in the nutraceuticals field, from my experience.
Yeah.
So that's a serious accomplishment. So let's talk a little bit about your investment. Where does your investment come from?
First off, a lot of it was out of pocket, my own. And then I found just friends and family arounds, people that have invested with me in some of my other startups and had good exits in the past. Saw that I've been successful in the past, and saw that I had a passion about this, and this is something that I firmly not only believe that it works, I know that it works, because I see it in my patient on a day-to-day basis. Patients I've interacted with and given the powder to, or sold the powder to, I've written reviews. Not that I've asked them for, but they've written these stellar reviews about getting their periods back, and so I'm very passionate about this, and so I was able to go out and people saw that passion, and so I've only really raised about $350,000 to date, and we've we're selling and we're manufacturing, and so we're going concern, so to speak. We're doing well. We are about to raise another round, and that's going to be really focused on more R&D. I want to get a real official clinical trial that I can actually promote, and then additional products that are not as I want to say sexy as our hero product, but add-on products. Some people can't tolerate the hero products, so they'll take the individual ingredients. And then there are other interventions as well that we're looking to expand the company in terms of the next few years.
So we talked a little bit about IP and that you have a U.S. patent granted and you have a patent attorney on board as well. Can you tell me about the impact of IP on investors?
Great question. So the initial investors are seeing this as more of a marketing play where you don't really need IP. You just need to get a following. And because I'm a physician and able to get out there in front of it and see patients and answer their questions from my perspective, the initial investors weren't so worried about an IP. Mm-hmm. As the company grows and as more sophisticated investors come on board, they are more interested in seeing how are they protecting their investment, evaluation on the IP, and so you're able to actually increase the field of potential investors with IP. You actually hopefully be able to increase the check writing size based on IP as well, because you're able to protect the investment with the IP. As you get more sophisticated, they look deeper in the IP and actually what it means, and so it's not just the IP, that this is a more of a whole package. So it definitely opens up more doors, the IP, and it helps to make it more of a sophisticated investment vehicle.
You mentioned before that you are an experienced entrepreneur and you have previous startups. And before we started recording, we were talking a little bit about Startup Nation, the book, and I remember reading there that startup founders that have experience, whether successful or unsuccessful, but are not a first-time founder, they have a much higher success rate in their second startup. So I want you to address a little bit about how your experience as a founder or being involved in startups in the past has impacted your current company.
Great question. So, not everyone's going to hit it out of the park on every single startup, and there's going to be a lot more failures than successes. And, one of the things that I've done over my career is I've seen many, many, many great ideas fall by the wayside because they couldn't raise funds. And I've seen many lousy ideas be able to raise funds because of the management. And so when you get out there, you want to see where the potential failures are and the potential minefields and challenges. Some challenges you can avoid, and some challenges you have to overcome and you have to hurdle. And it makes you better and stronger afterwards. I give lectures at YU. One of my courses is the business of biotech. In my first lecture, I talk about the 5 buckets, the 5 potential failures. You can have one bucket is, you can have a great intervention, be it drug, be it medical device, be it nutraceutical, but in your clinical trials, it doesn't do anything. Okay. So it may have worked in the bench, but it doesn't work in the patient. So that's a clinical trial failure. Okay. So it doesn't work. The next one is you may have gotten your clinical trials, but you may have failed in upscaling it. Like you can make this small molecule, but you can't upscale it. Okay. So that's in manufacturing. Okay. So now you've done everything. Now let's say you've gotten your clinical trials and you've upscaled it from bench to bedside, so to speak. But the regulatory pathway is a no-go and you failed there. And then, okay, so now let's say you were able to make it. You got a clinical trial positive. You have manufacturing down. You got it approved. The last 2 buckets are doctors and patients. Right. Will the doctors write for it? Is it enough of a clinical meaning to actually make the doctor write for it? Okay, whether it be a device or intervention, whatever. And then the last one is, will a patient take it? Okay, and so I kind of sit in the middle of that because I've actually had failures in each one of those buckets in my career. At Teva, I had failures in manufacturing at an approved product, but we couldn't manufacture it. And going through my career, it's always good to know the questions to ask. So your question was, in my history, is it better to have a fresh eyes on a problem versus someone who's tried and failed a few times, or at least been part of failures and to grow from that? And I think I definitely see advantages on both, but I think the person who understands what potential pitfalls there are that you have to navigate around, it's very, very helpful to have that.
Yeah, that's a good answer. That probably also explains a lot of the differences in success between first time and second time, because you've already learned, you already failed, or you succeeded.
Right. I'm not going to do that again.
Exactly.
I'm not going to mess that one up.
The best way to learn is by actually doing it.
And if you're going to fail fast.
Yeah.
If you're going to screw up fast and then learn from it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good answer. Now, we're sitting here in Beit Shemesh in Israel, and let's just talk for a second about how being in Israel has an influence on Provation Life. Could you have done this elsewhere? Or is there anything unique about Israel that allowed you to do this?
So if I would have been in the States right now, I'd just be, a routine OBGYN, doing my thing, delivering the babies, doing surgeries and seeing my patients in the office, and have zero, entrepreneurial mind. The moment you step foot in Israel, you're just thinking about, there is no real no. It's like, okay, I understand there's difficulty getting, that answer, but I think there's a better way to do it. I remember one of, my first startup that I co-founded with a gentleman by the name of Yossi Gross. Does that name ring a bell?
Mm-hmm.
So you had mentioned Startup Nation. He is one of those Lavi engineers.
I see. Okay. He's mentioned
He's mentioned in the book
yeah.
that he lost his job and then he just went and became a serial entrepreneur.
Just for the listener, let's just fill everyone in about what the Lavi project was.
Oh, sorry. So the Lavi was a fighter jet that Israel did not want to rely on foreign nations to produce a fighter jet. They needed to maintain their air superiority, and they within the Middle East. So in the 70s, I guess 72 or 76 or whatever it was, they started developing a superior fighter jet. And then at some point in some governmental decision was to abandon the fighter jet, just buy it from other countries. And they laid off this whole slew of academics and engineers and they flooded the job market, and there was no jobs. And so then they just started creating their own jobs. Mm-hmm. And so this gentleman by the name of Yossi Gross, I think he started 30 companies, exited a bunch, and he read in a magazine, the Nature magazine, Nature.
Yeah.
So he saw a article and he says, well, that's an interesting problem, but a dumb way to fix it. I have a better way to fix it in gynecology. And he's not a gynecologist. Mm-hmm. And then, so I actually went in, our first year that I was, after Aliyah, met with him, met with the team. I was hired to be one of the co-founders and chief medical officer. And we went from idea to human trials within 2 years. And that was an incredible lesson, and education. And from that, I saw the attitude, and I saw there is no no. Mm-hmm. Okay. And the Israeli mentality is, if you have an idea, then act on it. And that never would have happened in the States.
I see.
And so the entrepreneurial spirit, it just breathes here. And it just is part of the ecosystem. It's part of the water you drink. And it's really the air you breathe. Like if you speak to anybody, it's what's your day job? Okay, well, what startup are you working on? And it's really, it's too true. Or what 3 startups are you working on?
Wow. So that's a good answer. I think that really does hit the nail on the head from my experience, that come across all these different people that have a day job, and then they come to me with these ideas, and then they're just trying to find the time and the money to develop this idea on the side. So that's really great.
And the infrastructure is built in such a way where, it is paperwork. The government supports the ideas.
Right.
You have
chief scientist
office supports it. There is an infrastructure of investors that are looking for the next idea in Israel. And I think that there's a lot of, it's like a ship that goes up and down, on the waves. There's, we're only investing in the later stage, or only investing in the early stage. And I think everything comes around. So if you can nurture your idea and keep it going and keep it alive, you'll find your funding here too. So I think that there's all the pieces are in the puzzle or in the box. You just have to put them together.
Can you talk a little bit about your biggest hurdles moving forward as a company?
It's good. It's a good question, and I've had time to think about it. Obviously, I think funding is always, you got to kiss a lot of frogs to find your prince, your princess. You need to find the right combination of not just money, but you want smart money that can get you to the next introduction, the next connection, because, you could have the best idea, and unless you have the right connections at the right time, it could fall by the wayside. So, I always find networking is not that it's a challenge for me, but I don't like that part of the game. I like raise money, do your clinical trials, get a positive outcome, and then you'll be able to, whether you want to manufacture yourself or outsource, or whatever the case may be in terms of your business plan. But I find that a lot of, like I said earlier, there's a lot of money being spent on horrible ideas because that person or that management team is great at networking, great at schmoozing, great at, and so like I think that I'd like my company's value to stand on its own shoulders, and often my biggest challenge is saying no. Sometimes we need to bring along and do that networking and try to nurture it on other ways, not just on clinical trials.
What tips do you have for founders if they're at the beginning of their journey, starting their own companies?
Consistency. Okay, and also know that if you're in it, you're not in it for the short term, you're in it for the long term.
Let's just explain a little bit what you mean about consistency, because a lot of people I've spoken with in this podcast have talked about our project was X and now we had to pivot and now we're Y.
Right. So I was about to say the P word, because everyone likes to talk about pivoting, right? So when I say consistency, it's not necessarily with this is the job that this is the product, the end product. We have to have that product. No. The consistency I'm talking about is efforts and keep the forward momentum going. And you may pivot, okay, but you're making forward progress, okay? And so people get very despondent, and all of a sudden, 1 day's gone, 2 days gone, a week's gone, 3 weeks gone. You haven't made any progress. You haven't made any more introductions. You haven't made any, product development. And so the consistency is you have to keep, when you're, I don't know how much you watch football, but if you keep, as a running back, used to be coached to say, keep your legs moving, right? If you just keep your legs moving, you're going to break a big one soon and make forward progress. Move the chains, keep, grinding it out. And then every so often you're going to bust the big one. So it's really important to keep the consistency going where you're actually doing things. Because if you become like complacent, then you're going to fall off everyone's radar.
Right.
So that's what I'm talking about, the consistency.
I got
it. And then progress takes time. I tell my patients all the time, and I mentioned this earlier in the podcast. I said, patients come in and they want one pill to fix it. They want one, and they want to feel better the next day. They want, that's okay, antibiotics and whatnot. But for something that didn't start overnight, specifically this field of polycystic ovary syndrome, it didn't happen overnight. It was a lifetime getting her to this. It's going to be a little bit, it's going to take a little bit of effort to get there.
Yeah, how much time are we talking about in general for a patient to see results
for PCOS? So that's what's incredible. And this is why we got a patent, is I started seeing results within 3 weeks.
Oh, wow.
I had a patient come to me. She had facial hair, okay? One of the signs of hyperandrogenism, or elevated androgens, which is the male hormone. She had some chin hair, okay? And within 3 weeks, her chin hair reversed. Now, it doesn't reverse overnight because it takes a long time. In terms of hair growth, issues, it always takes 6 months, because whatever, if your hair is falling out because something you did 6 months ago, if your hair is growing in the wrong places, from a female perspective, it's because whatever's going on has been going on for a long time. So I was astounded to see her response within 3 weeks. It was dark and coarse. It became light, and then it even regressed even more. And then this particular patient conceived within like a few weeks later, and she was having a lot of difficulty, and she's telling all her friends about the powder, and she said it's a powder. So like that's our biggest fans are these patients who are success stories. So that was one of our, I generally tell my patients though, expect 8 to 12 weeks. The trials that I relied on my formulation for were 12-week trials. And so to get my patent, I started seeing results in 4 weeks and then 6 weeks. So that was quicker, and that's actually a novelty that was unexpected.
We mentioned briefly a little bit the concept of follow-on products, additional products, but let me just ask you, where do you see the company Provation Life in another year or another 5 years down the road?
Where do I see this company the next 2 to 5 to 10 years is growing our patient population. There's plenty of patients in the sea. Even getting a few percentage points of those patients, this company could be a 20, 50, $100 million company just on that alone. At least that's what our projections show. If we have additional products in the pipeline that are focus specifically at PCOS. We have there's a whole field that we really didn't talk about that's massive as well as the microbiome. Improving microbiome, if you're aware, there's this recovery with bacteria both in our cells and in our guts. And those different microbiome patterns have been associated with different diseases, including cancers, neurodegenerative diseases, metabolic syndrome, and PCOS.
Yeah.
And so one of my, big initiatives is also to help develop interventions that can help heal the microbiome. And again, it takes time it didn't happen overnight, but you have to, slowly make that. And so I see the company growing into that as well.
Okay, great. This has been an amazing discussion for me, and I'm hoping you can continue not only treating patients, but also educating them and helping them succeed.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to talk about Provation Life and about my successes. And I always, I mentioned this to you before it's all about the narrative. There's an unmet need. How did you fill that unmet need, and how are you going to grow and the vision to take it further? And the bottom line is that we're helping patients. And I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to get the word out.
Okay, thanks. Where can we find more information about Provation Life?
ProvationLife.com. The name is Provation. Ova is the center, so it's Provation. Instead of ovation, it's Provation. ProvationLife.com, and it's all there.
Great. Sounds good. Thanks a lot.
That was Dr. Herman Weiss, the CEO and co-founder of Provation Life. We hope you enjoyed this episode. There are many more to come. Do you have a great innovation or startup idea? We'd love to hear from you. You can reach out to us by going to our website, jmbdavis.com. And if you go to jmbdavis.com/startup, you'll see we have a special site specifically made for startups to help startups protect their innovations. Please be in touch with us and find out how we can help you. Thank you for listening, and we look forward to bringing you the next episode.